I want to thank everybody who joined us in media center of Ukraine, Ukrinform. It's year 9 of the war, and it's the day 258 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land. And I want to thank the representatives of all mass media who tell the world the truth about our heroic resistance. In brief, the schedule of our events for today. At 12 o'clock, we will have Vitaly Kim joining us online. He's the head of the military governor of Mykolaiv region. We'll talk about the situation in the Mykolaiv region. And at 12:30, we will have Fedor Venislavsky joining us, People's Deputy of the Parliament of Ukraine. He's the member of the Parliamentary Committee of the National Security, Defense and Intelligence, and the representative of the President of Ukraine in the Parliament. And we'll talk about the activity of the committee. Joining us currently is Oleksandr Merezhko, head of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Policy and Interparliamentary Cooperation. Mr. Oleksandr, let's start our conversation with the success of Ukraine in international diplomatic front and what's ahead, what are the challenges we're about to face shortly, please. Good morning, dear colleagues. I would like to start with a few words about the latest events. If we talk about the parliament, we mean the parliamentary diplomacy. We're trying to fight in the interest of Ukraine in the, so to say, interparliamentary dimension. There's a number of shapes. We hold meetings in different formats, including online and personal meetings with the members of the parliaments of different countries, and we are trying to achieve the military and technical and humanitarian support to Ukraine, the sanction pressure on the aggressor to increase. Apart from that, there's a number of delegations in the parliamentary assemblies in PESI, first of all, and I'm the member of this delegation in the Parliamentary Assembly of the European Council, and the biggest achievement, I think, is the resolution on the recognition of Russia as the terroristic regime. It's really the event that provides new opportunities to increase pressure on Russia as the terroristic state and demand, and to us, our allies, our friends in Europe and United States, to treat Russia as the terrorist state with relevant consequences. Thank you. I'm ready to answer any questions. Elections in the United States, we know that it's a very actual question which concerns Ukrainians a lot. What can be the consequences of the elections? Yes, really today there are certain forecasts. We know that it's a political tradition in the United States. If the president is a Democrat, in the Caucasus, usually Americans, the citizens of the United States, vote for the opposite party. In this case, the Republicans. So we forecast the Republican Party to reinforce their positions in Congress and Senate, but it will in no way influence the support of Ukraine. We appreciate a lot what we have, what the Americans call bipartisan support. And whoever wins the Caucasus, it will not negatively influence the support of Ukraine. On contrary, we expect the support to improve. Recently, a few representatives of the Republican Party visited Kiev. We met them, and we see very clear, very expressed position on support of Ukraine. In this case, we're talking about Lend-Lease, financial aid, with account of all our complications and problems we unfortunately face at the moment. But I would like to reassure you that we will develop our relations, and we can only wait for improvement of our relations and support on the part of the United States. So all the resolutions already taken will still be in effect no matter the results of the elections. Yeah, it goes without saying, absolutely. Sometimes, for example, we can hear some single, I would say even marginal skeptics voices among the Republicans or even among the Democrats. I want to say that it doesn't have any influence, and on the other hand, these uncareful statements, they cause the wave of agitation in both parties, because the majority of the majority of them are our friends. Let's talk about the support of Russian Federation by Iran. What are the steps that we are taking in the international legal field? We first of all demand the increase in sanction pressure. We know that Iran was recognized as the sponsor of the terrorism, and unfortunately we confirmed it by our own experience. And if we look at this from the international law vantage point, Iran became the co-participant of the Russian aggression in Ukraine, and Iran, even understanding that their weapons, their drones are used against civil population, committing war crimes, committing acts of genocide, crimes against humanity, Iran legally is a participant of those crimes committed by Russia. It's a very dangerous situation, and we demand the increase in sanction pressure on Iran. Many sanctions were imposed on Iran earlier, but still there are certain reserves that we can use, and we can demand the increase in the sanction pressure, because our final goal is the total isolation of aggressor, just as in case with Russia. And to achieve this total isolation, we still can use more sanctions. Recently, Iran recognized for the first time the fact of delivery of loitering drones to Russia. Doesn't it say that we already provided necessary evidence that Iranian drones are being used by Russian army? Or obviously such evidences exist, and Ukraine is ready to provide this evidence to anybody. Really, Iran acts in a very inconsequent manner, because they denied it first. They denied the fact of transfer of those drones to Russia, and then they changed their rhetorics, which is a sign of dishonest rhetorics, and they started saying that they started providing the drones before the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and in small amounts. But we know that Ukraine on a daily basis shuts down about 10 drones, so they pose a serious problem, and what Iran did is an international crime to be responsible for, that they are liable for. Just as everybody forecasts, if the ballistic missiles arrive to Russia, what are the steps that we are about to take in the international arena? I hope we will be able to stop that, and we have to act ahead of them, and we have to try to use diplomatic ways of approach, along with political and economic pressure, all possible means of influence on Iran's behavior, in order not to make it happen. I hope it will not happen. Dear colleagues, your questions, please. Good morning, Ukrinform, Olena Litvinenko, Mr. Merezhko. You mentioned recognition of Russia as a terroristic regime by PESI. We already have a call of our parliament to other parliaments of other countries. Do you have signals from these or those countries? And what is the number, if so, of countries who are ready to recognize Russia as a terroristic state? Thank you. The situation is the same as with the provision of military and technical help. There are our close allies, the Baltic countries, Poland, for example, who react things like this immediately, and they support us in the political plane. Some of those countries are ready And some of the parliaments already recognized Russia as a terrorist state. We can dispute the wordings because we actually applied to the democratic word to recognize Russia as a terrorist state, but there is another category, the sponsoring state. But terroristic regime is quite a correct term, is a right term. So we expect all the Baltic countries to do it, Poland, and other countries. We're currently working on that. In fact, when we have online meetings with our colleagues from the parliaments or parliamentary committees of different countries, we insist on the parliaments to do it. Why it's important? Because in that case, the attitude to Russia as to the terrorist state changes, and in that case, it's easier to impose sanctions of them, and it may also influence the issue of freezing and confiscation of Russian assets abroad. We have to punish them economically and politically, and the assets to be confiscated should be transferred to Ukraine and to the victims of Russian aggression in Ukraine. Significant effort of our diplomats was aimed at the recognition of Russia as the sponsor of terrorism, but we see that as of today our partners are not in hurry in this regard. What are your forecasts? We see that United States are hesitating, but we have support first of all of Senate. They approved relevant resolution, and now for what I know, there might be another resolution because the Congress is on the Ukrainian side, but the administration of the president is the resolution about the inclusion of Russia in the list of terrorist states, because this resolution is taken by the Department of State, and we are currently working on that. We're trying to convince them. Probably, we have to take into account some political factors related to communication of the United States with Russia. Maybe the administration takes all those factors into account. We don't see all of them, but we keep working because we think that this is a very principally important issue. Russia should be completely isolated. The representatives of Russia in international arena should be isolated, and if we manage to do it, the economic and political relations with Russia become toxic, and it's important for isolation of the terrorist state and influence of its behavior. Dear friends, please.
Sir, Lorenzo Cremonesi from Corriere della Sera from Italia, Milano. Sorry. Would I really to dig in a little bit more on the relation between Ukraine and the United States in this new context of elections? We don't know the results, but as you say, probably the Republican will get more votes. And you were very, as generally is the attitude of the politician here, from Zelensky to Merezhko to all the spokesmen, they all say, play down the problem, but we know there is a problem. We know there is a problem. We see, talking with colleagues, Washington Post people, Reuters, friends, NBC, working in Washington will tell you, no, there will be a change. If the Republican will get more power, not now probably, because only in January, February we'll see the effect, but the situation will be changing. There was this member of the Congress, I think, who came here or spoke, I don't remember now, I don't recall his name, who said we will not be ready to give a white check to this idea of supporting at any price Ukraine. We know what is the position of Mr. Trump, his personal relation with Putin. So my question is more general. The future of Ukraine with an American led by Trump, with a Republican in a prominent position, is not a problem at all for you? Are you really sure?
Yeah, well, in English, I can respond in English or in Ukrainian, which... окей. Я не бачу тут проблем.
I don't see any problem about that. The thing is that the American foreign policy, the mechanisms of American foreign policy, it forces that in relation of Ukraine there is a systematic policy being conducted for a very long time. Is the issue of the national interests of the United States, since it's the issue of world security, is the issue of support of the world order, the international world order. So the influence of the personality on the general policy doesn't weigh so much. So whoever is in power in the United States, the policy will not change, and I don't see any problems in this regard. But we have to work with the specific people. We maintain good contacts with the representatives of the Democratic Party and with the representatives of the Republican Party as well. I can give you examples of the congressmen and senators we communicate with, and they belong to different parties, like Marcy Kaptur, for example. She belongs to the Democrats. Bob Menendez, who is the head of committee for international relations, he's Democrat too. Marco Rubio is a Republican, for example. But all those people, they are very reliable friends of Ukraine, and we don't have any problems with them. On contrary, they understand the necessity to support Ukraine for the world and for Ukraine and for United States as well. So whoever is the president in future, it's difficult to say, because democracy is, this is how democracy is different from authoritarianism, because it's unforeseeable. We don't have a 100% forecast of who becomes a president, but it will not influence the United States policy in regard to Ukraine, because the United States interest and world order interests are behind that. Thank you, friends. Any more questions?
Good morning. My name is Kurokawa from Japanese newspaper Sankei. How do you see the recent report about the Biden administration recommended to Mr. Zelensky to have a contact with Russian regime?
Okay, yeah. Так.
Yes, I read about that. There was an article on Washington Post about that, but again, it's unconfirmed information, first of all. It's unofficial information, and it's not easy to comment the things like those, which are at the level of rumors. But there was a formal statement by the President of the United States that it's the sovereign business of Ukraine either to have dialogue or not to have dialogue, and when to have it. And it's our right, and the president in a very strict and clear way stated recently what are the conditions. There are 5 conditions, including punishment of the war criminals, re-establishment of international borders of Ukraine, reparations. So there is a very clear position that that the United States support and respect, and all other countries as well. Thank you very much for your answers. Any more questions, friends? No more questions. Thank you. We had Oleksandr Merezhko with us, the head of Parliamentary Committee for Foreign Policy and Interparliamentary Cooperation. Thank you for staying with us. I will remind you our next briefing is at 12 o'clock. We will have Vitaly Kim joining us, and we will talk about the situation in Mykolaiv region. Bear with us.